Greetings, digital world. Welcome back once again to another episode of Spliced in Later. I hope you all are doing well as we enter the back half of 2023. We're on the home stretch. We're almost there. This is the first of a couple episodes this week, I think. I do plan on seeing another movie later this week, a movie that I thought was coming out next week, but is in fact coming out this week. So if that pans out, which it probably will, look forward to 2 episodes of Spliced in Later this week. If it doesn't, I'm sorry. There'll be 2 next week. We're continuing our good run of reviews at the moment. We've been reviewing a lot of good movies and TV shows and things that are currently out there in the world. And this is a unique one in that it's one that I did not plan for. Every year, I've said many times before, I look at the movies that are coming out over the year. I map them out. I put their dates down. And then I begin the process of crossing them out, moving them, juggling them. However Hollywood reacts to pandemics or strikes or all of that stuff that's always going on. But majority of them are always just IP brands I know. So you will find a lot of content on Splicing Later is in relation to bigger continuing things. Not exclusively, but at least that's the stuff I always know is coming. So you got your sequels, your prequels, your reboots, your sidequels, superhero movies, Star Wars, Matrix, Planet of the Apes, Jurassic World, Fast and Furious, action stuff, all of that stuff, all those things that have already existed before this year, but is getting some new installment in some way or another, or as part of a recognizable company, whether it's Disney Animation or films by Tarantino or Christopher Nolan. Genuinely, that's the stuff that's on my list. But every year, there's always a few movies that I have no idea are coming. I don't know what they're about. The first time I ever get wind of them is they'll be in a trailer before a movie starts, or it'll be word of mouth. It will come down to me that this is a movie that I should see. We've already struck gold this year with Nimona, one of the best movies of the year by far. Definitely one of the best animated films I've ever seen. If you haven't checked that out yet, it's on Netflix. Go give it a whirl. But that was one of those movies. I heard the word Nimona, but since it wasn't on my list, I didn't prioritize it, which is a shame because it took me a couple months to get around to it. But we've had some good examples of this stuff in the past, whether it's stuff like The Green Knight or Bullet Train or anything like that. It's always delightful to be surprised by something, or at the very least, to be enticed by something to want to go and see it. So if you haven't figured that out, today we are reviewing something that is not part of an IP brand, that is an original idea. Taking a chance on this one. We are reviewing The Creator. I don't know if most people know about this movie or not. I feel like you would if you've just gone and seen a movie recently, because that was currently like the big movie that was part of the big trailers in front of blockbusters and things. So I'd seen the trailer for The Creator about 4 times by the time I went and saw it. It was intriguing. It hooked me from the first minute I saw it. It seemed like a really cool sci-fi movie, which we don't really get a lot of, really, like brand new ideas. It's always in relation to something bigger, I think. And with AI and everything that's going on in the world right now, a sci-fi film focusing on AI and how it exists in a futuristic world and our relationship to that, seemed pretty good. Directed by Gareth Edwards, who directed Rogue One, which, whatever you think about the Disney Star Wars movies, Rogue One is a pretty good dark war film of all things. And the big hook thing that really made me want to go and see it was obviously Dune Part Two fell to the wayside due to the recent writers and actors strikes. It was going to be released in November. It's been delayed till March next year, I think, which is a disappointment, but these things happen. But the word of mouth was, if you can't see Dune Part 2 this year, then you should see The Creator. And it's like, oh, okay, interesting. Okay, cool. Sold me. Good word of mouth there. Interesting trailer. Cool concepts. People involved. Directed Gareth Edwards. Actor John David Washington. Music by Hans Zimmer. Sounds good. I'll check it out. I didn't rush to see it. I didn't go to the red carpet screening or anything like that. With these movies, I don't feel like I need to see them right off the bat. Because I haven't been anticipating them. So we'll caught it over the long weekend. And overall, I liked it. I really, really liked it. I wish I liked it more enough to say that I loved it. But unfortunately, it hasn't stuck with me the way I wanted it to. I feel a bit disappointed by it, to be honest. Maybe in terms of the build-up, I guess. If someone says, oh, if you can't see Dune, see this movie, that's a pretty high bar to set. But also, I think what the trailers hinted at and what I wanted to see is not necessarily what I got. It's still an entertaining, well-made, engaging film, which I think a lot of people should see, and I think deserves some accolades and some this is some good stuff. Nice to get some brand new concepts up there. I just think the execution is a bit sloppy. I think it falls apart in its third act, and a lot of what it addresses, concepts, ideas, execution of it all, I feel like we've seen in several other different types of movies before, which unfortunately doesn't make it as unique as I was overall hoping it would be. So the plot of The Creator, it's set in an alternate timeline of sorts. It's set in the future, around 2070, I believe, if I got the dates right in the movie. But it exists in an alternate timeline where AI essentially evolved back in the 20s and 30s. The movie starts off with like a newsreel, like the news today that you used to get in front of those old movie reels where you could go and just walk in and see a movie and walk out, and World War II was happening in the background, that sort of thing. So in that mannerism, AI began then, and by the time it evolved up to our times and points, it was effectively a part of the society. AI had personality, ideas, beliefs, all of that, but was still subservient to humanity, basically used to do the jobs that we don't want to do, or for entertainment purposes, whether it's crowd control for police, or boxing in the ring, or whatever. Everything was going great. Then, oops, all of a sudden there's a big nuke in Los Angeles. A bunch of people die, but millions of people die, I should say. So America outlaws AI completely. No more AI. One lone holdout is Asia. I don't exactly know where exactly in Asia. I think it was South Asia. But they are still using AI, or to put it more nicely, they're living in conjunction with AI. So America declares war, not on Asia, of course, on the AI they're using. So on the backdrop of all that, we have our protagonist, John David Washington. Yeah, that sounds right. Denzel Washington's son, the star of Tenet and Black Klansman. He plays Joshua Taylor, who is a American undercover operative who originally goes in to find out where Nomada is, who is like this grandfather of AI technology, essentially the person over there who is still creating AI and evolving them and leading the rebellion to give them freedom, essentially. While undercover, he falls in love with a human woman played by Gemma Chan. Everything's going pretty swimmingly for them. And then something terribly tragic happens. And we flash forward later into the future where Taylor is washed up and sad and miserable and all of that. And he's approached by the US Army, mainly Allison Janney's grumpy colonel, who wants him to lead them on a strike mission behind enemy lines back in Asia to find Nomada and take him out. And they convince Taylor to do that by saying that Gemma Chan is there somewhere as well, so he needs to go do that. If you've seen the trailers, it's not too much of a spoiler to eventually realize that Taylor finds a young child who is essentially an AI child. It is artificial intelligence, but it's in a child body. This child is the key to the AI's overall plan for the end of the war, whether it's good or bad. And Taylor gets caught up in essentially trying to use the child to find Gemma Chan, but also finding a weird sense that he needs to protect the child and look after it, all being hunted by his fellow army recruits and soldiers and all that. And also the AI resistance, who also want the child and don't know what Taylor's intentions are for it. Right off the bat, the acting from John David Washington is outstanding. He's a fantastic actor. He's definitely one of the rising stars. He needs to be in more stuff. Everything I've seen him in, he just knocks it out of the park, and it's true enough in here. The range of emotions that he has to play in here, whether it's absolute grief, indifference, smartass, he's always just great to watch. He's a great protagonist to follow. Not necessarily to support. His character's kind of an asshole and does some really shitty stuff in this. So you don't necessarily root for him, but you find him engaging and entertaining to follow and see where their story goes and all this. He essentially holds the movie up on his shoulders. There are a lot of other characters in here, played by different actors: Gemma Chan, Ken Watanabe, Alison Janney, Ralph Ineson, but they come and go fleetingly in the movie. Essentially, it is John David Washington's show and the child, whose actor I do not know. I say this about all child actors that I review on this. I don't really want to talk about their performance in any way because fuck that. But I will say, great. Great playing a child who is an artificial intelligence, walking that fine line between not quite being human, but also not quite not being human, I guess. The visuals in here look great. All of that stuff about how the visual effects artists for Marvel and Disney are completely overworked, and that's why the CG looks shit, is very true, because I don't think that same pressure was put behind the creator. I imagine time and effort was put in to make the simulants, which are AI creatures that have people's faces grafted onto them, which is very relevant considering what the strike was at the moment about actors trying to protect their likeness from being putting on AI. In this instance, though, anyone's likeness on an AI robot has been given willingly, so I don't know if that's a subtle dab at Hollywood. Probably is. But looks great. So the faces are grafted onto skulls, which have weird cuts in the back of their heads, and then there's this like spinning circle that goes directly through their head. It looks real. It looks incredible. It doesn't look stupid in any way. There's some other simulants as well that don't have real faces on, which genuinely feel more human to me than a lot of the human characters in here. There's one simulant, I don't know their name, but just the mannerisms, I assume it was stop motion capture or whatever they needed to do to get that to happen. But it just looked real. The world looked believable and real and lived in. It was a world that we have not experienced, but we understand completely what's happening, why it's happening, the motivations of everybody involved. Just looks incredible. Not just the CG itself, but you can really tell when something's not shot on a green screen. They're actually out there in the riverlands and on the mountains and all of that stuff. Some really nice aerial shots. I've always said green screen works for those big superhero skirmishes, but if you're just trying to portray a movie, there is something to be said from actually using the outside sets, real life backdrops, which give your films a sense of realism and lived in that is better than that sort of coldness that we're getting from a lot of movies these days. For instance, I recently watched season 2 of The Flight Attendant. I don't know why, I just did. But they CG'd a backdrop of Kaylee Cuoco on the Ferris wheel of Santa Monica Pier. And that really pulled you out because you're like, she's not actually in that Ferris wheel. That's annoying. Also, the sound design, cinematography, music is a completely enveloping thing. I saw this in a cinema which has a special surround screening thing, and it just sounded incredible. The music playing, whether it's the ambience, setting the mood, or even just what's on the radio. Really great stuff. A lot of earworm, catchy songs in there, but also some really moving musical pieces which really make you feel what's going on in the movie. That said, putting all that aside, the movie for me is fairly forgettable just in terms of what happens in the story, why it happens, and what the overall point of it was. Now, I have to take with a grain of salt that I may have put this up for too high expectations, whether I was comparing it to Dune or not, or whether I was really expecting a real deep dive into AI and its place in the world and what constitutes life and all of that stuff, which seemed to be what we were getting from the trailers. It's there, but it's not really the focus of the movie. The movie itself is an action quest sort of movie. It is John David Washington and the child moving from set piece to set piece, engaging in some action, explosions, excitement, moving on to the next thing. I guess that's a compliment to the movie in that it can do that in this world and have it feel natural and real. But to me, it just feels like a lot of missed opportunities in terms of the history it establishes, how AI works, how everybody feels about it, what America's ultimate plan is to get rid of AI, what the AI's ultimate plan involving the child is. A lot of it isn't really fleshed out or addressed. It's skirted over to get to the next thing. There is a lot of our main characters going to a place, talking to some people. That place gets attacked. We move on. Rinse and repeat about 4 or 5 times. Plus, there's elements in here where you can notice other films that were obviously a huge influence on it, whether it's Elysium or Oblivion or anything like that. Any movie which involves a giant thing in the sky, which everybody's constantly saying, we have to get up there to stop to do the thing. Seen that many times before. And when you do that, you immediately establish, okay, well, until they get up there and do what they said they need to do, each thing that they do before that is not necessarily relevant to the overall goal. I don't know. As I said, there are a lot of characters in here, a lot of great actors. None of them really get a chance to develop themselves or shine. A lot of characters you are introduced to, and then they're dead in the very next scene, which is fine, but we're not even given enough time to really know who these people are, what their relationship to John David Washington is, why they're doing what they're doing, how did they get to this point. They are dead. And there's even a confusing bit where I don't know what was happening with Ken Watanabe's character. He's a simulant, but he also says that, there's other hims out there. So I got confused as to whether he had actually done something in the film, or if he'd gone somewhere, or if something had happened to him. And I still don't really know. Alison Janney, it's a unique role for her to play an antagonistic character. I thought that was great, and they hinted at some really interesting backstory for her or some motivation. But unfortunately, she spent the majority of the film just chasing after John David Washington, arriving to where he was after the fact, saying some lines, moving on. So that's really frustrating. It's a sense of characters used as plot devices rather than actual characters. And as I said, the third act is very sloppy. It's like they realized where they wanted to go to get to the end of the movie and realized they were so far away from it that they needed to just blow through the last act just naturally occurring. In the space of 10 minutes, we go from a mountaintop in Asia to an LA police station, to on the way to the moon, to on a space station. And it's sort of at breakneck pace that you get sort of whiplash watching it. And I think the movie's ending as well is very, very anticlimactic for me. I wasn't really feeling it. Had no engagement. The ultimate fates of our characters, you could see how it was going to end a mile off. And you still have questions. You still don't really know if there's any sort of conclusion to this world, if there's going to be more, if what it's alluding at. I looked it up, and Gareth Edwards has said, this is designed to just be a standalone movie, not to start a trilogy or a franchise or whatever. But honestly, I wouldn't mind if there was another one, just to sort of complement this one and just wrap up those frustrations that I have with it. Overall, I did enjoy it. It is a good movie. It is competently made, and it is a fun time, and it's a great sci-fi thing that shows off John David Washington's talents. I just think it has a lot of wasted potential. There was a lot there that could have made it one of the greats. Something up there with Arrival or something like that. And instead it is pretty much just a lot of what we've seen before, generically so. And that's disappointing. I think that's the ultimate thing. Is just I'm frustrated with what could have been. It doesn't come anywhere close near to my top 10. And people might go, I bet Blue Beetle and Dungeons and Dragons are on there, but not the creator. Yeah, unfortunately. Again, it's all down to personal taste. It's funny that personal taste exists. But for me, it's just sort of it was okay. But it's not sticking with me. I'm not thinking about it. And I don't really have a desire to watch it again anytime soon. So all that being said, I give it a 6 out of 10. If you're looking for something to watch in the cinemas that isn't something that you've seen 1,000 times before, this is mostly okay. At the very least, it's not the next installment of something you've already seen. It is new, and it is very well made, and it is a good story. It is still a good movie. But if you hear someone say that, this is a totally immersive, incredible sci-fi film that will replace that Dune itch you want to scratch. I honestly want you to temper your expectations because you probably won't get that. You might still have a good time with it. I still had a good time with it. I just didn't get a great time out of it. And I guess I'm a little disappointed by that. There, well, thank you very much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed. I will be back hopefully this week to review The Expendables 4, which I know going into that's going to be garbage. So do expect the review to probably be not in the positive sense. But who knows? I'm an idiot. I'm a contrarian. I might think Expendables 4 is one of the greatest movies ever made. And you know what? That's okay. I can like what I like. But yeah, that'll be later this week. Unless I don't see it, which would be weird, in which case it will be next week. Along with a review of Ahsoka, the latest Star Wars show that's wrapping up this week, which I have personally been enjoying, but for reasons that are very specific to me. And I would like to, before I do that review, talk to someone who's watched Ahsoka, who has never seen Star Wars Rebels, because I feel like that's a different experience for them entirely. At the end of all of it, though, if you're interested in seeing the creator, go check it out. I think at the very least, people should go and see it and make their mind up for themselves. Just because I didn't jive with it does not necessarily mean that it is not a jiveable movie. The other two people that I saw it with liked it a lot more than I did. So there you go. So until later on, when I check in with you next for my Expendables, whatever the hell it's called, review, stay safe, stay kind, stay lovely to one another, and I will catch you next time. You've been spliced in later. Adios, muchachos. I'll catch you next time.